The Legend of Zelda, a game filled with mythical monsters and castles. It's almost like something out of a fairy tale or legend. And you know what? There's actually a connection between our own myths and legends and the ones from The Legend of Zelda. We have been roaming the land of Hyrule for a long time now, and a lot of new legends have been born over time, like the Master Sword or the Goddess Harp, and there are way more examples. It's a land filled with myth and legend. Just talk to the villagers in the game, and they all have a story to tell. Well, sort of. You get where I'm going to. But it's a medieval kingdom, so it's understandable that there are a lot of stories of heroes defeating demons and dragons. Demons like the Mice, also known as the Demon King, the risen form of an ancient evil sealed away by the goddess Hylia. And the dragons like Eldin, also known as the Fire Dragon. He's one of the 3 dragons who oversee the surface. But there are also a lot of examples of such legends in our own history on Earth. For example, the Fountain of Youth and Robin Hood. The Fountain of Youth being a legendary spring that restores the youth of anyone who drinks of its waters. And Robin Hood being a famous archer, known for stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, and fighting against injustice and tyranny. But there's a connection between Earth's legends and myths, and the ones from The Legend of Zelda. Some legends from the Zelda games look a lot like some Irish Celtic legends of old. The Celtic myths and legends are all about warriors and heroes sent into battle instead of gods and spirits to save lands, fight evil beings, rescue fair maidens, and discover magical artifacts. But which legends and myths am I talking about? The Master Sword? Well, yes, actually, there are some big similarities between the Master Sword and the Celtic legend of King Arthur and his sword Excalibur. When Arthur was 16 years old, the king, also known as his father, mysteriously died. Merlin, the advisor and court wizard, suspected that the queen's daughter, the angry Morgan Le Fay, might be responsible. Igraine ruled as queen, but she was a weak leader. Different lords tried to step in as king, causing unrest within the kingdom. Merlin brought together the knights and lords of England. He showed them a strange sight. A sword in stone, with a message that read, "Whoever can pull this sword from this stone will be king of England." All of the knights and lords tried, but not one could pull the sword from the stone. Soon after, Arthur was at a tournament with his brother Kay. Arthur had forgotten Kay's sword, and he ran to find it. He saw the sword in stone, and thinking he would borrow it to give it to Kay for the tournament. He pulled the sword out of the stone and gave it to Kay. When the knights and nobles discovered what happened, they were stunned with disbelief. This young boy had pulled the sword from the stone? Arthur put the sword back, and one at a time everyone else tried to remove it, every time unsuccessfully. And every time Arthur tried, he pulled it out again with no effort. The knights and lords of the realm saw their new king had come at last. The Master Sword is probably a reference to Excalibur. There are 2 versions of Excalibur's story, but we're focusing on this one. The story of Excalibur is very similar to the one of the Master Sword. They are both magical swords pulled from a stone or pedestal by the one chosen hero or king. But that's quite obvious. It's not something new. Is there more to this? Well, yes, because we are moving on to the fairy. Fairies are a very common thing in the Zelda universe, and also the Celtic stories. Link mostly uses fairies to heal himself, and they are considered to be allies. We mostly see them at fairy fountains, or just flying around in the wild. In the Celtic mythology, there are 2 kinds of supernatural and magical fairies, the troping fairies and the solitary fairies. The solitary fairies are, as their title implies, loners. But some do come together on occasion to have meetings. They are generally less kindly disposed towards people than the tropers, but only the evil ones are truly inimical. The trooping fairies are generous and live in communal groups, usually under mounts or hills. Their social structure closely imitates that of humanity. Now the trooping fairies look a lot like the fairies Link interacts with. They are kind, friendly, and also have magic powers and live in caves and holes, which we call fairy fountains. They also have a social construct, with the Great Fairy and Fairy Queen being their leaders and living in groups just like the Celtic fairies. But what about the solitary and evil fairies? Well, they also exist in the Zelda universe. They are called anti-fairies. They appear for the first time in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Anti-fairies are the opposite of fairies in terms of healing properties. Anti-fairies sap a victim's health, while the fairies heal them. But this is not the last thing I found, oh no. There's one more thing I want to show you, and that's the connection of music between Zelda and the Celtic legends. In Celtic mythology, bards were sometimes said to have had spiritual journeys to the other worlds and magical powers in their rhymes, poems and songs. This is something we see in The Legend of Zelda all the time. Just look at Majora's Mask and its many magical songs like the Song of Healing and the many warp songs. There are even magical harps in the Celtic mythology, just like they have in The Legend of Zelda. In The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword we have the Goddess Harp, which has been passed down within Hylia's bloodline. The magical harp we find in the Celtic legends is the Dagda's harp. This harp affects the people around it. For example, when its original owner, the priest Dagda, struck its chords, it started playing the music of tears, causing people to cry. But believe me, there are way more connections between the Irish legends and myths and the Legend of Zelda, like Epona's origins, the triforce and the gods themselves. But we don't have the time to discuss those, sadly enough. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, the connection between the Irish Celtic legends and the Legend of Zelda. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching and don't forget to check out my other videos.